The site plan thing for the soul.
Good morning. How's everybody doing?
Good.
Morning. Sorry. All right, we have our technology straight, and we thank Sid for that. This is the October 14th, 2021 meeting of PlanRVA, full meeting, and so I want to welcome you to that and ask Mr. Thornton if you would lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, sir.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have roll call.
Sure. Charleston County, Mr. Coda.
Here.
Ms. Johnson. Ms. Russell.
Here.
Chesterfield County, Mr. Carroll.
I am here.
Thank you. Mr. Davy.
Here.
Ms. Fry. Here. Thank you. Ms. Haley. Mr. Holland.
Here.
Thank you. Mr. Engel.
He's having difficulty logging in. He's been trying to log in.
We've invited him to join the panel. If he might need to click an OK. Mr. Engel, if you can hear that. We'll work with him on the background. Mr. Smith. Mr. Winslow.
Here.
Thank you. Henrico County, Mr. Baca. Mr. Brannon. Mr. Mackey.
Here.
Reverend Nelson. Mrs. O'Bannon. Here. Mr. Schmidt. Mr. Thornton.
Here.
Thank you. Town of Ashland, Ms. Abbott. Dr. McGraw.
Here.
Thank you. City of Richmond, Mr. Addison.
Here.
Mr. Blackwood. Mr. Giovia.
Here.
Mr. Jones. Ms. Ms. Lambert. She's going to be virtual, so she might be here later. Ms. Lynch. Dr. Newbell.
Here.
Thank you. Mr. Poole. Ms. Robertson. New Kent County, Mr. Lockwood. Mr. Moyer. He's also supposed to be virtual. Mrs. Page.
Here.
Thank you. Goochland County, Mrs. Lascolette. Mr. Spoonhour. Hanover County, Mr. Davis.
Present.
Mr. Peterson.
Here.
Ms. Pritchard. Mr. Waddell.
Here.
Mr. Whitaker.
Here.
Powhatan County, Mr. Byerly.
Here.
Mr. Hall. We do have a quorum. Thank you.
Thank you. We do have a quorum. Fantastic. At this time, we will take public comments. I'm reminded that this is the largest regional body in the entire area. So we have a lot of folks here. So we want to take public comment to the extent that members of the public are here to offer them, or if you've received any comments, Ms. Heater, I would just ask accepted into the record to the extent we received them.
We did not receive any public comments before the meeting, and said, if I'm not mistaken, we don't have anybody on the chat. I do want to note that Mr. Engel is now here, and so is Ms. Lambert on the virtual.
Wonderful.
And Mr. Baca, thank you.
All right. Hopefully, everybody's had an opportunity to look at the agenda. And can I get a motion to approve that agenda? So moved. Motion and a second by Ms. Page. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Wonderful. Also, we have the minutes beginning on page 2. And so I didn't know if there was any corrections anyone wanted to offer or a motion to approve. Yes, Mr. Waddell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On page 2, under Public Outreach and Engagement Committee Report, second line, reading the correction, Mr. Davey gave a brief overview of the actions taken early in the morning by the, instead of Executive Committee, it should be Public Outreach and Engagement Committee.
Mr. Weddle, actually, the executive committee did take action that morning,
I apologize.
following the recommendation from the public outreach. So I can add that clarification so that it shows the chain of decisions. We can add that. That's a good suggestion.
With that amendment, is there a motion?
Move for approval.
Any discussion?
Second, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Like sign?
Aye.
I will now just briefly go over some of the items we went in executive committee. Topically, we've been having an ongoing discussion of the office space planning and leasing, and so that is continuing. We are starting to look at spaces and winnow them down according to a list of criteria. Martha, do you want to just add a little bit to that?
Yes, so certainly any member of the board who is interested in participating in this process, please let me know as soon as possible. Members of the executive committee, the finance committee, and Mr. Davey as chair of public outreach have all received the list of candidate properties for visits and the staff recommendations for what sites we will actually visit. We're scheduling site visits for October 28th and 29th in the afternoon. So any board member who would like to participate in those, please let me know. We're certainly interested in your input. We are just trying to kind of move along the time schedule here. The objective is to be able to move forward with identifying bona fide candidate properties from which we would invite proposals so that we would understand what the cost would actually be for our needs to be fulfilled from a space fit perspective, from a tenant build out perspective, and the pricing for lease terms and that kind of thing. The goal is to be able to bring back recommendations and those proposals to the executive committee in December so that we can continue on this timeline. And I'm certainly happy to share additional information as we're moving along with anybody who'd like to follow the process more closely. But again, executive committee members, finance committee members will both be shepherding this process over the next 3 months.
And in addition, I think I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that I think Virginia Department of Emergency Management grant has come through on the technology upgrades we've all been seeking. And so I think it's our intent to use that grant. Anything you want to add to that?
We're just excited to be able to make some improvements here, to be able to make the virtual component of meeting participation for both members of the boards that we support as well as the public, that additional ability to participate. I will note, just sort of related to that, we do expect that there will be action that will permit regional public bodies like the commission, like the Transportation Planning Organization, like the CVTA, to continue to participate, members of those boards to be able to continue to participate virtually. So this doesn't look like this is something that is going away, certainly, and I think that there will likely be some expanded opportunity for you as members to participate in the in-person or virtual kind of hybrid situation beyond the declaration of emergency that we're operating under right now for the city of Richmond that expires December 31. So each of those bodies will likely need to review and or develop their remote participation policies. So we're gearing up to make sure that the technology is here for that purpose, also so that members of the public have this opportunity to view and observe the meetings and participate and engage virtually. And all of those things we'll be watching closely with Mr. Gregory over the next probably 6 months or so, and coming back with any kind of actions that the boards might need to take as far as updating policies.
Now, if I can call on Mr. Holland for our Audit, Finance, and Facilities Committee report, Chairman of the Chesterfield County Board of Supervisors. Mr. Holland.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, everyone. The Finance Committee is expected to meet this month on October 26th, pursuant to our monthly change cycle for meetings for fiscal year 22. And as part of that meeting, we will review the financial reporting to the committee and to the board ultimately for the first quarter of fiscal year 22. And also we will look at any budget review and recommended modifications at that time as well. In addition, the fiscal year 2021 audit, I should say that the auditors were on site for the audit field work last month on September 9th. And the work's been performed, and we expect and hope to have an unqualified, or if you will, clean opinion on our fiscal year 2021 financial statements, and hopefully no significant issues or modifications. So the auditors will be presenting that information to the Finance Committee and certainly to the regular committee, full committee, appropriately. So thank you for that. And if there's anything I missed, Ms. Heater, if you would please, let me know. I appreciate it.
I think you did a great job, Mr. Holland. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That does it. I really want to take this opportunity to thank everyone, the committee, and thank all of you for working with us this year. And thank the committee for its outstanding work as well. And certainly our director, Ms. Heater, who's done a tremendous job in keeping us on track. Thank you, Ms. Heater.
Thank you, Mr. Holland. I really appreciate that. Mr. Gregory did remind me during the executive committee meeting this morning, we did talk about the timeline for the audit. And so as you indicated, assuming we do get what we expect in an unqualified opinion, we will circulate the audit report to everyone on the board following the Finance Committee meeting on the 26th. And assuming that it is an unqualified or clean opinion, we'll plan to have the audit on the agenda for the December commission meeting for approval. Any submissions that are required prior to that point, we will submit pending board approval. But I would just put everyone on notice that if for some reason that we don't expect right now, but if for some reason we did have any issues that come up with the audit report, we will notify everybody and work with Mr. Winslow to convene a meeting to deal with that after the Finance Committee. But we're not expecting that, so.
Thank you.
Essentially, there's no reason for us to meet in November unless something comes up. So hopefully we don't have to do that. Try to use everybody's time wisely.
Did you say we need to vote on that though? I mean, what?
In December.
In
December, once received from our audit and finance committee, once they've done their review, we will vote on it in December.
Okay.
All right, Mr. Davey, public outreach.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, everybody. Things are moving along very well in our public outreach and engagement committee so fast. I unfortunately have to apologize to my own committee members that you're hearing this update this morning instead of yesterday. We chose to move our monthly meeting back until November, and thank you guys for responding to come to that meeting, in part because we're making so much progress on our next imperative, which you authorized last month. And after we got the board to authorize going ahead and forward with our branding project, Martha has reached out to the stable of consultants that we've already pre-selected. We've scoped out this branding project, and yesterday we had a kickoff meeting with the Brand Federation team, which was a very, very healthy kickoff meeting. Remember what we sort of talked about in the overall engagement strategy is both sort of an in-reach sort of conversation to make sure we all understand more about this organization, who we are, what we're promising each other and what we're promising the community. But more importantly, what does the community say about us? That is the brand position or the brand value statement that we're really charging this consulting group to come up with. So what we're going to go through is an exercise where they're going to start their discovery. Their discovery is going to sound a little bit like what we did when we set our overall strategy together. There's a lot of interviews. They need to get to know us. They need to get to know the perception of us. They need to get to know our work. So instead of trying to be repetitive and having a lot of the same interviews that happened 60 days ago and 90 days ago happen, we're actually sending all that information to Kelly O'Keefe and his team to make sure they can sort of distill through all of that. There will be interviews that need to be conducted because their task is a little bit different and a little bit more refined than what the overarching strategy is. This is for us to put that fine, sharp point on our brand value statement. So many of you will probably be interviewed again through a slightly different lens. Everybody on the committee, actually that meeting we set up on the 9th, we're probably going to have this consultant engage with us during that meeting. So that might be an extended duration. We might go for a couple hours that day. But the idea being for us to really get here by the end of the year, making some fairly significant progress on sort of refining this point on who we are, what we stand for, what's our promise to the community. So I'm thrilled that we've made this progress, and I thank you guys for the trust and sort of taking this approach. Those of us in the private sector, we realized the importance of brand 25 years ago, and Nike and their swoosh and all these kind of things that you read about. I mean, they were leading edge people and, sort of making this promise to the community. I think it's equally important for this organization, as you said, the largest regional body of meeting of elected officials, in Central Virginia. If we're not talking about who we are and what we stand for, then others are going to define that message. And I think Kelly O'Keefe and John Newman and the people that Martha has put on our stable and on our bench are some of the best in the business.
And what are we paying for this? Because I thought we did this about 2 years ago when we came up with PlanRVA. Haven't we already done this?
That was the website redo. And so as part of that allowed us to do the name change. So now this effort is really to kind of come back behind that. And as Mr. Davies said, what does that PlanRVA stand for? What is the commitment? I will add the CVTA and the TPO meetings over the last probably 3 months have been circling around the same topic of how do we make sure that the public understands who PlanRVA is and what we do, how that relates to who TPO is and what they do, and who CVTA is. And so this is all kind of under this umbrella of being able to very clearly arm all of us with that information and then be able to communicate that out to the public so that it's clear. And so I think that part of these interviews are going to really be intentional in reaching out to those of you that are part of multiple of those boards and making sure that we're thinking about that from the different ways that PlanRVA and those affiliated entities show up and support the community.
Yeah, but I thought it was
Other
pretty
comments?
clear that one is TPO is federal, PVC is state, and the CVTA is local. And it's funding for roads, and they each have their own funding source, wouldn't it? Isn't that enough to tell
It's a
people?
great example. And my observation, having sat on this board, is you can articulate that in your sleep because you've been part of it for such a long time. And there's an awful lot of people that need to understand that message who say something completely different. So if we don't sort of control that message externally while we're not in the room, that's sort of where that PlanRVA brand gets diluted. And what we don't want is we don't want it to be.
I thought it was pretty
Other
clear.
questions, Mr. Harris?
I think to the point that you just clarified with Ms. O'Bannon's got that comment as well. A brand is what people say about you. Not what we think about ourselves. And you just mentioned in the beginning, we're the largest regional body and they keep working on these issues. And I don't think anyone knows that. And with the breakdown of the different things we do, that's the point, is that we have a logo, PlanRVA. We have these great decisions and missions we are achieving and going for. But outside these walls, I don't think anyone really knows what we are. And that's what brand and brand equity is about. When you think of a logo and you see something like the swoosh, you know it's Nike. When you see a certain logo and you associate it with what its mission is, that's brand equity. That's what you're trying to create. Right now, I feel like, and I'm saying this as a part of you all, we don't have any. No one really knows who we are, what we do, and they see it, the effects of it, maybe with projects in their neighborhood, but they don't know that we are helping create the coordination on these projects. That's the story that needs to be told. And I think that's the point that we're trying to get to. We have a nice name now. It's a great logo, but with that needs to become the story behind what that means. And I think that's the next step of how it's going.
Mr. Peters?
I want to share a little bit from yesterday's CBTA Finance Committee meeting. We had a similar discussion there. And I think the thing we've brought out is there's a tendency to work in silo. And we have that silo, so does CBTA, the TPO. But we have to remember that there are a lot of stakeholders who are affected by the decisions we make, and we have to bring them into the fold. If we don't, we're missing the boat. But I think this is part of developing this brand is we just used yesterday, we were talking about the fall line trail. That fall line trail affects more than just the CBTA and the funding. That affects Virginia tourism, it affects economic development. All these other agencies need to be kept informed and brought into the fold and their thoughts as we're working. And I think the same thing applies here at PlanRVA.
Good comments, Mr. Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. When we did, I say we as a region, when we went to PlanRVA on the website, I agree, that wasn't a rebranding. It did help with some things. But when we're out even talking, I know we're talking about the public right now, but I'm really focused on those who are elected, who represent their constituency. And some of those folks don't know quite exactly what we do. And I get that it's detailed, but some of those folks don't know exactly what's being done and how some of the projects are being completed in their localities. And that process works through this board here. So to the point that you tell somebody, well, actually, I'm with the PDC. TPO handled that, but we're going to talk to CVTA. That's just not, I mean, that's not going to work in front of most Board of Supervisor meetings, but it's certainly not going to work at a town hall meeting. And, you know, I had one of the most contentious projects in my area, and I was sitting right where you were sitting when we had an opportunity to do a roundabout that was completely federally funded, $17 million a number of years ago. And we brought in a lot of folks. We had some town hall meetings, and people started to realize how we got this paid for and where it came from. And that the only thing we had to do on the local side, thanks to the folks who were here, was administer that. They started to realize the benefits of what was going on. And then that came down, we had our town halls, then the board voted on certain things. They realized that it was a much bigger picture. And quite frankly, some of the board members in Hanover County said, hey, that's a huge benefit. So I agree with going out to the public, but I also think that those who have a larger pulpit, such as the elected officials, that they know what's going on. And I won't mention any names, but there was a gentleman who was recently elected and said, what the heck do y'all do over there? And I'm like, that's it. You know, at least he asked. Some folks would just nod their head and say, yeah. So the website was certainly not a bad idea. It was a great idea, and PlanRVA worked. But we've got a lot of folks that don't realize all of the heavy lifting that's being done. And I'm not trying to break my arm, patting ourselves on the back. But when you go back to your local boards and you know, your councils and those types of things, and they actually realize what's taking place here, I think we're going to see huge benefit, because what we say here actually manifests itself into something on the ground back in a locality. And if folks can articulate that, particularly at the highest levels, and I say that without any hubris, but the elected folks can articulate that and recognize the value and where it came from inception to completion, that's going to help with our brand. And to that point, a website's not our brand. I think PlanRVA is great, better than our PDC, but the branding is exactly what we said. I mean, it's what other people say about us, and that's huge. That was a great comment. So those are my only comments. Thank you. Mr. Chairman.
Other comments, questions? Yes, sir.
I would just say that from the other end of things, building on the comments that we've heard, that this is a lot about trust. We do a lot of big projects from PlanRVA, and we've done a good job with the CBTA. And so I think one of the things that I'm really excited about being on the Public Outreach Committee is developing that trust in the community on these big projects and incorporating all the advocacy groups that are involved in that. So I would just support the comments and yeah.
Other comments or questions from our online friends? I don't want to leave anybody out. All right.
So, Mr. Chairman, just one last comment. So again, many of you were interviewed for the overall strategy that was put in place, because that was important. So if you share all that information and try to make sure it's not redundant and to not sort of waste anybody's time, but if you're asked to interview again, share some of these thoughts, because that's what we're looking for. We're looking for a little bit more finer point for this team to get to the broader strategy that we were asking for.
Thank you. Wonderful. Great report. Ms. Heater, we have reviews.
Yes, they are, the monthly summary are included in your packet.
That's on page 5, right? Page 5.
Yes, it starts on, yes. They are there for your review. This is not an action item. It's just simply a report back that we do to be able to tell you the activities that occur. I'll just do kind of a context. We did our annual report submission to the Department of Housing and Community Development in September, and I think we did something like 206 reviews over the course of the fiscal year last year. So Sarah Stewart on our team, our Chief Environmental Planner, and Sid Kumar handle that. They shepherd those reviews when they come in. This is part of the oftentimes federally required consultations that need to happen. So they come to our office, Sarah and Sid will review them, and they will determine who in the jurisdictions that are affected need to receive those things. And so we really, frankly, serve as a conduit for information, kind of like a clearinghouse in this role. And so we gather input, if collected, from the localities back through us, or the localities submit their comments back through. So that's kind of the role, and that's the purpose of that report. Is this just kind of keeps you up to date on the activities that have been funneled through. And these are oftentimes projects that are at varying stages of planning for environmental compliance with a infrastructure project, for example, or other types of public notification and review. So, yes, Mr. Waddell.
Thank you for that explanation. What is the turnaround time, and who is the point of contact at the local jurisdictions? Does it go through the elected, or does it go?
It does not. It's a staff level review. I would imagine that depending on the nature of the project, the elected officials are already heavily engaged in the project. Oftentimes, this is a consultation that happens after, for example, a locality has sought out federal funds, has been awarded those funds, those kinds of things. So this is a generally speaking, like a post-award consultation that happens. And it's particularly helpful for localities that may be adjacent to a site. And so that also kind of helps to make sure that if they're in the spirit of regional cooperation, if there's something happening in New Kent County that Charles City needs to know about, this is a mechanism for the staff. I did that on purpose.
I'm going to talk about that later.
It is a mechanism for staff to be able to communicate and make sure that, those kinds of surprises don't. I can't say that we're always probably the best at it, but I mean, that's the process and the intent.
Thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions or comments on those reviews?
Thanks. Okay, so this is in your packet. It was, I think, posted on the website. So those that are viewing from home, we're pulling this up on the screen. Sid's going to drive it for me, and I'll just let you know when it's time to move the slide, Sid. So this is the format of our fiscal year 2022 imperatives that were approved last month. This is a report of where we are as of the end of the first quarter. Hopefully the color coding is pretty self-explanatory. Green means good. We're, sailing along track. Yellow means might not be quite where we want it to be, but I'll talk through a little bit of what I think we can do to either get back on track or make up that time. And then red is just, we're not making the progress that I had hoped. So I wanted to be able to talk through those things. That first page there is just really a summary overview. These are the key imperatives. That color coding hopefully just gives you a high level view of where we are with each of the imperatives. So I'm going to move to the next slide and dive into the actual imperatives and talk through these. So imperative 1, preserve our financial position. You've already heard the audit update from Mr. Holland today, so I won't continue on that. But we are moving forward with, continuing to refine what it looks like for our lead finance role. Much of that is largely dependent on how our relationship with CVTA evolves over the next few months. So I don't have a substantial update for you there, but we're continuing to monitor that situation actively. In conversation on a weekly basis with the HR roundtable about their consultation with the CVTA, Personnel Committee, Finance Committee, and full authority. And so, my goal is to be able to be ready to pull any trigger that we need to move forward if and when we're asked to do that. And so certainly Mr. Winslow and I have had a couple conversations about that. And then I think just as a way of coming, this is something that has been talked about at the Finance Committee, but just as a look forward, I think we are going to be moving toward a request for authorization to move into a more robust financial management system. So that's something that the Finance Committee has talked about a little bit. Proposals and more detailed information will be coming over the next couple of months to be able to do that. Mr. Van Dornick, who's here today, has done a phenomenal job in being able to bring his expertise to the organization and help give, frankly, for the last 6 or so months, an assessment of how we function, what our tools are, where our opportunities to strengthen our internal systems and that kind of thing. And so he'll be putting together that package for us in the coming months.
Yes, sir, Mr. Butler.
Oh, thank you.
Will this be a CAN system? This is a software system you're talking about.
Yes.
Will it be a CAN system or a custom?
I don't have the answer to that yet. That's part of the evaluation. So I think part of what Mr. Van Dornick is doing is he's been evaluating how we currently function, where we might have some opportunities for improvement. And then the next step is to kind of go out there and see what opportunities. Just for everybody's benefit, we use QuickBooks right now, which is pretty versatile, actually. And so, he's been evaluating, are we actually maximizing that system? But there are also some more I don't know what you'd call it, like more kind of specific to our type of organization products out there. And so that's sort of the next step. And some of them are more of like out of the box and some of them are more kind of a designed for customized kind of situation.
Sorry for that.
No, it's a great question. Yeah. 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 Big month. So moving on to imperative number 2. As far as managing for core operations, this is where the meat of our agency's work happens. So I certainly don't want to minimize the body of work and the breadth of accomplishments that are here, but I wanted to hit on a couple of highlights. Many of you who sit on the TPO board did sit through the quadrennial certification process. So we are awaiting that certification letter, but I think, it was virtual. It was an interesting experience, but I think Chet and his team did a phenomenal job in preparing for that and working through, and at least the verbal initial feedback was quite positive. So kudos certainly to him and his team, as well as the policy board members and the TAC members and everybody that makes that federal program run the way that it's supposed to. Similarly, we're sort of working through, as Mr. Holland indicated, the programmatic elements of our financial audits. There's lots of pieces that sort of get sprinkled out into our financial reporting for the different programs that we administer. So the federal funding reconciliation and our indirect cost allocation plans, those processes are underway, and that's just part of our queue of work that happens every fall. Many of you know that last Monday we did have approval from our RTPO for the 2045 PlanRVA long-range transportation plan. This is a huge lift for our staff, and it's just really exciting. This is actually the second long-range transportation plan that has been approved since I've been here, so it's been neat to see how that process has evolved and really how we've been able to make tremendous strides in engaging the public in the public long-range transportation planning process. And then, the big win for the region is the fact that the CVTA now exists. And so we have this list of priority projects, which is, Chet would probably say it's much more than that, Martha. But I mean, in essence, it's this list of projects that the region has agreed, would be successful or instrumental to our region's success. And now the CVTA comes and there's a funding mechanism to actually move those projects from a wish list to the 6-year improvement program. So it's just really exciting. And Sulab, Ariel, and Chet and our whole team, all 11 of our staff members in the transportation program, this has been what they've lived and breathed for the last, year and a half. So thanks for the support on that. Our coastal and rural transportation program grants are ready to close out as of September 30th. So we're in wrap-up mode for those 2 things. Wanted to call attention to this from a PDC side of things, just as a reminder. The RRTPO took action earlier this year to request the governor's approval to expand the TPO boundary to essentially mirror the whole of the PDC region. So with the exception of the part of Chesterfield County that's served by the Crater PDC and the Tri-Cities MPO, we do not have a rural transportation program as of October 16th. So So we're actually kind of shifting how we structure things internally. And so the whole of Charles City County, the whole of Goochland, New Kent, Powhatan are now served by the Richmond Regional Transportation Planning Organization. Probably means little to you as elected officials, which is a credit to our transportation staff, but it's just a little bit of a subtlety in acronyms and those kinds of things, and a shift in the funding that we have available to support planning needs in those communities. So that closeout is occurring as we speak. Regional prioritization framework, and Mr. Carroll, I will note the error here in the text. It was presented to the CBTA on September 29th, not yet approved. So I remember you made a point of calling that out yesterday. But we are definitely moving forward. And again, thanks to Chet and Miles Bushing and other members of our staff team who have been working actively with your local government staff to be able to develop that regional project prioritization process for the CBTA. And again, how do we get those tax revenue dollars assigned to projects that have been identified as priorities in the region? We launched the regional housing grant. Last month, you approved the resolution to appoint Partnership for Housing Affordability as our implementation partner. We had an information session on Tuesday of this week for prospective funders. There will be an official announcement coming out on October 19th with the application being released. And so if you have partners in the nonprofit affordable housing development community in your localities, please let them know about this. I'd be happy to send you, we'll distribute the announcement with the application and instructions when it comes out on the 19th. The application deadline is November 2nd. As Laura Lafayette and Javon Burton said at our last meeting, our hope is that we move quickly through this process, certainly intentionally, but also quickly to be able to allocate the $3 million that have been awarded. And then we want to go back to Virginia Housing and say, we've got more that we want to do. Let's get some more funding allocated here. So that's exciting. I think everyone already has met, but I just want to call attention to Janice Firestone, who joined our team more than a month ago now. But she's our transportation program coordinator and has been just a wonderful addition. We swiped her from Hanover County, so my apologies, especially in light of that conversation earlier about people moving from.
It was a little awkward.
But we're really, really pleased to have Janice with us. And so that was one of the vacancies that has been filled this year. And that was a position, shift that you all approved as part of the budget. Our community engagement manager will be starting on November 1st. I will officially announce who it is now that she's given her notice at her current job. Rashonda Lanier Jackson is a staff member here currently at Department of Housing and Community Development. So we were able to pull somebody the other direction this time. And she'll be starting November 1st. So one of her first activities as part of orientation will be to meet with the Public Outreach Committee, and then we'll make sure that she's here to be able to have her face in front of all of you and meet the different boards that we support. So we're definitely excited about that. And we have the other positions available. We're scheduled for interviews next week for our administrative assistant position, and then the planning positions will follow for announcement and recruitment later this fall. Executive committee heard an update about the succession management plan that's underway. I think we'll have probably future meetings that are dedicated more to that. So I'll move on. But I did also want to share that we've been doing a lot of work last fiscal year in this on Title VI compliance. That's Title VI of the Civil Rights Act. Every federal program that we administer, so virtually everything we do here has federal dollars attached to it in some way, shape, or form, is subject to Title VI compliance. So this isn't just a TPO issue. It's across the board for our entire agency. That Title VI is been in place since 1964, but it certainly has, I think, received a lot more specific kind of specificity around what's expected, what compliance looks like, and how intentionality around inclusivity looks in communities. And that spans everything from unserved and underserved communities that, qualify in kind of the statistical analysis of minority and majority demographic composition. It also includes the Americans with Disabilities Act. It includes the Older Americans Act. And so it's a comprehensive look at how we are including the whole of our community in our planning activities that are supported by federal dollars. It's really kind of a fundamental requirement for our agency. So earlier this year, we completed the Title VI plan, and that's an engagement plan for how we intend to comply with Title VI. Since that time, we undertook 2 additional projects that are part of the review process that we received from our state and federal partners. And that was to look very specifically at our purchasing practices. So as a update, Finance Committee will see these documents. We've done an overhaul to our purchasing program to have a much more inclusive purchasing program, to really be more focused on supplier diversity, focusing on women, minority, veteran, and locally owned businesses wherever we can, and really being much more intentional about how we go about our purchasing. The bulk of our purchasing as an agency fall in the state's category of small purchases. That's $100,000 and less. That means that we don't technically, according to state procurement, are not required to go through a competitive process, but we are going to be incorporating more of that into the process to make sure that we don't just kind of go with the easiest bidder to be able to purchase from. And then similarly, we've been looking at that from an inclusivity and recruitment, really making sure that we're much more intentional about where we advertise. This has been a conversation, I know, Mr. Thornton, we've had a number of times about how we can get into some of our historically Black colleges and universities, think about how we can be intentional about hiring to make sure that the people that are on our staff are representative of the region. And that is everything from race and ethnicity, age, ability, geographic orientation, so that our staff members have a clear understanding of the difference between urban and rural issues. So we're really being able to take that into much greater consideration. So that was a lot. I will spend less time on each of the other imperatives, but lots been going on this first quarter.
I just wanted to clarify, and I haven't been able to catch up with this year since yesterday's finance committee meeting. I wanted to clarify, we went back and looked at the minutes, and the prioritization framework for the CBTA was approved by the board, so that is also moving forward.
So did everyone hear that? The CBTA did take action in September to approve the regional project prioritization framework, so. Thanks, Scott.
Since we're already no,
Thank you. Yeah. Number 3, building relevance and demand for services. You've heard about the brand strategy proposal that was approved in September, and the kickoff happened yesterday. You've already heard about the community engagement manager. I know that this is a project that many of you probably are not familiar with, but we've had some really exciting work over the last 2 or so years through this Lower Chickahominy project, and it's been really neat to be able to connect, frankly, more in New Kent and Charles City County, and be a part of what it looks like for localities to be in dialogue with the designated tribal organizations and tribal nations in our region. So for some of our communities, that might not be something that's really showing up on your agendas, but it's been fascinating, frankly, and it's been a huge learning opportunity for me to be able to learn about how these sovereign organizations function in our local government construct. And we've been able to look at that through the lens of what it means to think about economic and ecological impacts along the Chickahominy River. So Ms. Page, I mean, I know you've been a part of a lot of that work. So it's just been really kind of eye-opening. Tribal organizations are part of regional planning organizations like ours in other parts of the country, particularly out west. They sit at the table just like a locality does. It's not as common here. In Middle Peninsula Planning District Commission here in Virginia, they actually do have the tribal organizations as members of the commission. So we're really interested. I don't have a lot of answers yet, but it'll be interesting to know as these newly designated tribes and tribal nations, tribal organizations, they each go by a little bit of a different terminology. As those designations mature, we will learn how that affects our relationships, particularly as it relates to state and federal dollars. So it's been exciting, and we will have the signing ceremony for the cooperative MOU as soon as we're able to do that in person. So.
And may I ask a question?
Yes, ma'am.
Going over the statistics from the census for Henrico, I was surprised to see we didn't have very many Native Americans, number-wise or percentage-wise. Are they mostly in Hanover or New Kent or Charles City? I'm just asking. Because I know there are plenty, because I've been working with the Henrico Foundation. We had travel councils from the Rappahannock and the Mattapanai and the Pamunkey. So I know I just don't know where, because I just saw air statistics.
Sure.
And I was surprised. Where are they located?
We'll do a look of that. I'll
Is
ask
it
our
near here,
team.
maybe?
I would say though,
I mean,
at least where the
Kingway?
organizations and the tribal lands exist, they're not in Henrico. They're kind of in the surrounding area. So where, individual residents live is a little bit of a different subject than where the tribal lands are. But you're right. I mean, it makes sense to me that you're not seeing maybe as many numbers in Henrico because tribal lands are more to the east and the north from our region. But I'll refer to our experts.
Yes, that's a whole time.
And I will say, just this week,
You got the Eastern.
yeah, the Eastern Division. Yeah. I will say, just this week, Chief Atkins has been doing some really neat programming in the community. It was a virtual event, actually last night. Really, I'm not sure the organization, it was a faith organization that put together a program where he came to speak about the nexus of culture and religion and history and how we kind of think about that all together. It's, as I said, I mean, for myself personally, and I think other members of our team, it's been just really wonderful to learn so much about the heritage of the Native American people in our region and the history, because it's not something that we have had a lot of exposure to. So it's just been neat. So maybe we could have the chief come and talk to this board sometime.
Is it?
He's wonderful.
Is it Steve Atkins?
Steve Atkins is one chief.
Steve Atkins, I know they're cousins, Steve Atkins and the other, I can't remember. But there's also the Costello family. I know they're very active.
Costello family, they're with the Pamunkey.
Yeah, Costello's with Pamunkey.
That's what I'm getting.
And Stephen Atkins is the Chickahominy tribe, and Eastern is, who's Chief of Eastern now?
Dana Atkins.
Pardon me?
Dana Atkins.
That's Atkins also.
Yeah, I know that, but, because I had reporters often ask me, who should I call, for information about that? He's the only phone number I have, is Steve Atkins, but Dana,
yeah.
Dana Atkins, okay. And the other is the cousin.
I read it. Just put it on the list. Wonderful.
Okay.
And our Better Together webinars are continuing. I have not forgotten Mr. Davis about the idea of bringing reports back to local government. So I want to get with you on that soon.
No, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Sure.
It's important. It may not be pressing right now, but it is important.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And then we're going to hear later today from Rhonda Russell about what's going on in Charles City County. So we've got that launched Innovation in Local Planning series in full swing. So moving on to imperative 4. This is where the bulk of the work and driving kind of our new initiatives happens. I'll skip over that red text for a moment, but you've heard a lot about CVTA. That has been just a really exciting effort for PlanRVA staff to be a part of. I just want to do, compliments. The CVTA members themselves see a lot of Janice. They see a lot of Nicole when she was here, of Chet. But Chet's whole team is in some way, shape, or form. And Mr. Thornton, thank you so much for coming to the staff and talking with them and saying your thanks. It means a lot. We talked about that in the executive committee this morning, and appreciate that. Many of us around this table were in Charlotte last week for the intercity visit. And so there were conversations about the continuing need to have this regional vision. I've pitched a couple of ideas or frameworks for how we could continue to have PlanRVA play a role in preparing the regional strategic plan. That is one of our codified responsibilities. When the General Assembly established planning district commissions, one of the things in code that is set as our responsibility is to prepare a regional strategic plan. So it felt like the conversations in Charlotte this past week were really kind of teeing up that there's maybe some growing consensus that would be helpful. So we'll be working with our other regional partners to talk through. I've had some conversations early on with GRP, Richmond Region Tourism, the Chamber, the Community Foundation, many of the large institutional anchors here in the region that work with you all and work on your behalf. We are launching the market value analysis. This is a data project, so more to come for those of you that are interested in that, but it's in partnership with the Richmond Memorial Health Foundation. The first steering committee meeting is scheduled for October 18th. This actually came out of the city as a kind of a follow through from the master plan, but it is a regional project in scope. The data project covers the city, Henrico, and Chesterfield, and we'll be working to be able to create companion data layers for the surrounding jurisdictions that are part of the RMHF footprint. So pretty excited about that. And I think we're going to be working out an arrangement where we will actually own the data at the end of the project, which will be tremendously helpful for our other activities. And then I will share with you that as of yesterday, we did have a call with DEQ, and we will be, we've been invited to submit a proposal for renewal of our watershed improvement program funding that expires currently December 31. And we've been invited to submit a proposal for picking up that funding again January 1. So that'll come to you not only as a budget amendment, but we'll be continuing that work with the localities. So, and then number 5. We've already heard a little bit about the office space and the CBTA staffing. So, as you can see, I just wanted to note here, we're really working to develop a continuity of operations plan. If anything, the pandemic has told us that we need to be much more adaptable and flexible to whatever may come. And so we're working on putting together a little bit more of a roadmap about how do we deal with certain things. We've got a safety committee that's formed internally that is looking at, particularly as we're coming back into hosting more meetings in person, how do we look at safety if we do need to evacuate? I think we had a staff meeting last month where the tornado sounds were going off around the region. So just being much more mindful of that and making sure that as we have new people engage with our organization, we have safety in mind. So that was quick. Sorry for that. If anything, it just articulates that there's a lot going on. And I think we'll continue to update you on a quarterly basis about where we are with the imperatives. The only area where we are lagging is in the emergency response fund. And I'll just say candidly, I think everyone can understand and appreciate our emergency management community is catching their breath. So we had just a phenomenal partnership that formed over the course of about 10 days back in March of 2020. It resulted in maybe all told a 6-month fundraising effort where we were able to generate $7 million of contributions, both corporate and individual, donated to the Community Foundation. The Emergency Management Alliance of Central Virginia actually administers that fund. And well, they oversee and direct that fund. The Community Foundation administers it, but funding from that $7 million fundraising effort touched every one of your jurisdictions. It helped keep some of your critical human and other health service providers in operation before things like PPP existed. And it helped, be able to transition where YMCAs were doing programming. It enabled food pantries to stay open and be able to help some of the organizations that really needed to be able to get PPP even in those early days. So it was just really exciting. And the idea is that fund will exist across any disaster that hits a regional scale. So, we know when we see flooding happen in Louisiana, there's all these people that want to do like the text to give kind of thing. We wanted to make sure that we had a mechanism to receive that goodwill when something like that, if it does unfortunately happen here in the Richmond region. So the Emergency Management Alliance is working through how they want to promote that going forward, how they want to structure it. And we're just really kind of playing a support role in that regard. But that's why it's delayed is just we're giving them the space to collect themselves after an incredibly long 2 years. So that's my report.
It's a good report. Questions, comments? Yes, Mr. Whitehill.
Well, first comments, I'm impressed, actually overwhelmed with the level of activity.
That was my goal. I'm just kidding.
You've achieved it. I thought I was busy. Do you get any sleep?
We have, Mrs. Page mentioned. No, Mrs. Page mentioned, we have a staff of 22 people, so this is the whole group that's working on this. And it's your locality staff members that we're working with too. This is not, I mean, our staff does a phenomenal job, and I think they don't sleep sometimes, but no, they work with a lot of stakeholders to be able to pull this work off.
I now see the outreach committee has quite a bit of information to get out to them. I do have one question. Imperative 4, market value analysis project, and we own the data. What is the subject matter, the emphasis of the data, and how will it be disseminated? And don't take this the wrong way, what use will it give us?
Sure. So the market value analysis is a data tool that has been perfected and designed by the Reinvestment Fund. It's a national funder that came out of like Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, and they're based in Philadelphia. So they're a vendor, if you will, that Richmond Memorial Health Foundation has hired to do this work. It's the second time the market value analysis will be conducted here in the Richmond region. The first time was in 2017, and it covers administrative data. So it's housing market values. It's home mortgage disclosure act data. So where are people applying for mortgages and are they getting approved for them? So we can look at redlining. It looks at vacancy data. So we use various sources. Localities are really involved in this process from a property maintenance and property code enforcement perspective, but also the United States Postal Service has data about vacant property. So it's all administrative data. It's not people data. It's what's going on in the built environment by census tract, essentially. And so we take that data, and they have this rubric that they use to categorize each of the census geographies. And we can see that taking people out of the equation, because it's not about people, the conditions of, neighborhood X in South Chesterfield look exactly like, South Richmond, or something. And so we can start to see sort of the similarities. Then the idea is that organizations like Richmond Memorial Health Foundation can take a look and they can overlay health outcomes. So they can say, well, how do health outcomes overlay with what's going on in the built environment? For us, we will look at it and think about, how do we think about transportation infrastructure? The fall line trail, how could a fall line trail and investment in that kind of regional project start to change the conditions in a neighborhood, and so different organizations will use it for different purposes. I know it was instrumental to the Richmond 300 comprehensive plan as part of the way that they started to think about from a neighborhood level, how to think about different strategies and tools for stimulating development, stimulating redevelopment, that kind of thing. So I could talk all day about it, but I'm sorry.
Will this be disseminated to the local planning departments?
Yes. So not only will it be disseminated, but each of the local planning departments are part of the process. So they help to shape what data get collected, how that data gets sort of overlaid with other things for their purposes. And then it's also going to be public. So all of the maps from 2017 are out and public. I don't have access to the source data because they sit at VCU, but in the future we'll have access to it. I could share the link to the 2017 set of maps and reports. And then I should have mentioned Partnership for Housing Affordability is a critical partner of this effort too. So it ties in really nicely with that regional housing framework that Javon Burton leads. So.
Wonderful.
Thank you. I'm glad I asked the question.
Yeah.
Nice. Other questions, comments? Yes,
Hi.
Ms. Van.
I can't help but go back to, I'm sorry, this PR thing. We need to know how the system works. We are elected to do that. And so that was why years ago, there was a book called The ABCs and the PDC and the MPO. That was the title on the big notebook. And we had a course or a class when you were first elected or first came on this board. And it was like 2 or 3 meetings where we sat down with staff and they each individually talked about what they did and that sort of thing. And then we figured out as elected officials how things worked and who you talk to and all that. And I get back to when people ask me what they are and what they do, as I talk about it, just as I did before, I've gotten it down to about 1 sentence for each thing and maybe a paragraph worth of talk. Their eyes glaze over. And they don't care. They just say, I just want you to do this project and get it done. And they just want to know the end result. They don't care how I got the money. They don't care how many people I had to talk to. They don't care how many meetings I went to. So to me, an explanation of PlanRVA, the TPO, and the CBTA could be one pager or 3 paragraphs or something. I just don't understand what the PR is about, because that means we're promoting it. And when they come in, even if the public comes in, every person we've ever had come in with a comment was a specific project, you know, for when their neighborhood, or a specific project for the city or that county. And they were coming here as part of their checklist of who they needed to bother because they thought their elected representative wasn't listening. So I could go on about all the meetings I go to and how hard I've worked for all these people, and I'll do that, you know, when pressed in an election cycle. But, and of course I will talk about how hard I work for you, because I do, but I mean, they just don't seem, they really don't care. And if they do care, those are the people that try to change it. I'm going to just pull that out there too, and try to quash it or squash it, or whatever term you want to use. I just don't understand what PR has to do with it, because there is a definition that we worked on. Yes, we had to have good website or good materials, and we finally got the symbol with the regional commission, and they understand regional too. But why PR? I mean, what's with the PR? I just don't get it. Why we have, I'm sorry, I may say I'm a communications specialist, and I work for newspapers, magazines, public broadcasting. So I know communication background. I'm sorry, but this is where the rubber meets the road, or this is where you get the votes, or the federal money jabs with the state money, and that's all they want to know. I mean, I'm trying to figure out why PR.
I'll take it first, and first I'll say, if we can have this honest conversation around here, it's extremely healthy, because that's exactly what we're trying to achieve, is to make sure the same words that you use to describe us are the words that somebody sitting in the Chamber RVA office is talking about us right now are stating. So it isn't necessarily PR, because communications will be part of what we'll choose to do once we establish the brand. What we're trying to do is uncover and accurately articulate what the brand is through this exercise. So we're not necessarily talking about spending money on the communication side just yet. We're trying to spend money on gathering and refining that brand equity that was talked about before, such that people, all 180,000 people, that are sitting around thinking about a regional strategy, or thinking about how do we better market this community, or how do we keep this community safe, all knows what role PlanRVA could play in that. So
Don't we have a community engagement person? I mean,
So I want to make sure I get comments, Ms. Page.
So, for me, I find it important because when I was appointed to this board, which was the PDC, I didn't get the ABCs of the PDC and the TPO and all of that. I didn't get that dictionary. So it became like the commercial with the little girl and her mom is loading the dishes in the dishwasher. Washing the dishes instead of putting them in the dishwasher. It's like, so what do you do? I had to have a quick shot of what do I do? And it became important to me because our taxpayers' dollars go into supporting this organization. And so in a election or non-election year, our budget is every year. And so with the number of residents that we have moving into New Kent County from other localities, I find that with some of them, it becomes a very important question, and they have knowledge of PDCs or other organizations. And so every now and then you'll get a quiz on something that you didn't think you needed to know. So for me, it becomes my responsibility, if no more than at a board meeting or a work session, to talk for a few minutes about PlanRVA and what do we do and how do we do it and what is their purpose. And even with looking at the revised website, it has helped me to get some of the bullet points that I need for that to be able to explain as intelligently as I can what we do. So that's why it's important for me and our locality.
Mr. Coda. Ms. O'Bannon, I understand your question all, and I'm so glad to have this opportunity because I was going to go way over my 5 minutes that you gave us for our presentation. 9 years ago, when I got on the Board of Supervisors, my colleague was on PlanRVA and all this other stuff, and I kept asking them, what do we get out of this? What do we get out of this? What does Charles City get out of this? And I came to the conclusion that we didn't get anything. And I was going to say that later on, but the message I hear today is, Mr. Davies says, who are we? What do we stand for? Ms. Heater says, show up and support the community. I did not even know that CVTA was formed until I saw it on Facebook that I was going to have to raise my sales tax at my business to support it. And I'm on that board. So that's terrible. And really, I've been really passionate about the fact that I did not even know about the formation. Now, I'm going to blame myself. Dad always told me if you point a finger, you did not tell me. Dad always told me when you point a finger, you got 3 pointing back at you. Well, I'm guilty because I haven't done what you've done and worked hard at understanding all of this. But no, I haven't. But I'm going to change because when I went at the last, oh yes, I'm going to be the squeaky wheel because at the last CVTA meeting, I said, I'm the special needs child in the room. I do not know what we're all about yet. So I think it's wonderful, Mr. Davey, I think it is, I wrote your name down here, that we're actually going to do this because I think it will not only educate the community and the people, it'll educate us.
Well, that's what I'm saying is it appears to me that it's internal, more so even than external, because if you understand it, then you can explain it to others. But the internal thing I'm talking about is every person that came on this board went into a room and did a little presentation.
No, ma'am, we didn't.
That's my point. That's why we need to do it internally, is what I'm saying. Everything I've heard implies the people around this table don't understand what we can do and what we should do or could do or that notebook was great because it was like a dictionary, even words like B and P that I use all the time, and I forgot the people in the room aren't going to know what that is, during a recent zoning thing. But that's my point. It appears to me it is internal, not necessarily external, because you can put it on the website as to what we do, but we are the ones that have to make sure it happens. I will never forget this. There was one time we were around this table and people were complaining about the FHWA and some letter we got. Do you remember that? I remember you were in the room. I remember that. And they said, we're going to go down there. I think you said, we're going to go down there to their office and we'll sit outside that office until they come out and talk to us about this. Do you remember that? Because boy, I do. And the first thing I said was, no, we're not. They will come here because we are their boss. We're elected. They're not. So that's what I'm getting at. You don't even know what power you have sitting around the table.
Actually, they won't come though.
They did. A woman came
congratulations to you.
The next month she came. Oh, you just have to tell them it's your job to be here. But I will never forget what happened. This letter was incomprehensible and it was we didn't even know if the answer was yes or no. And I read the letter to her and I said, does that mean you're going to do it or not going to do it? I don't even remember what it was. And she said, read the letter again. I did. And she said, well, there's your answer. And I said, there's no answer in the letter. That's why you're here, ma'am. And I've never gotten over that. But that's what I mean. It is internal. This is the thing. I don't think you realize what you could do or the power we have And that's one of the reasons the CBTA was set up. We came in this room and everybody was mad and said, we're not getting money that we're due. Chesterfield said, we're only getting maintenance money. This is ridiculous.
Barely getting that, but anyway.
Well, there, I know, you don't want to get into that, but, and we actually sat down and had arguments or discussions. I mean, that's what I'm getting. It's internal in the function here.
The Supervisor Banner, he's gonna do better.
I know, but
He's gonna do
But
better.
I look very forward to the
Okay.
branding. And I look very forward to everyone that's spoken here, hopefully that we will accomplish what you said.
And
Thank you.
And I want to call on two other people and be mindful of time, because we do have one final presentation so we can get out of here on time. And that is Mr. Davis
Thank you.
first,
Very,
please.
very kind of you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will say this, I respectfully disagree with some of the categorizations. So even if everybody around this table knew all of the ins and outs, and I suspect that most of them do, we are in the business of external communications. That's what we do. Last thing I think, I know my citizens want to hear, but I suspect most of yours is, I'm not going to explain it to you because folks sitting in a meeting on Thursday morning, we got it figured out, right? So we're in the business of external communications. That's what we do. Ms. Pace just brought that up. I mean, we're dealing with people's dollars, their hard-earned dollars that then go into the public, coffers. So this isn't a matter, we're not trying to sell, and I recognize the corollary with, Nike and all of those, but we're not trying to sell a product. We're actually communicating with people that this is how your government is working. Here's what you're getting. Granted, is and how these things get on to schedules, right? How it manifests itself to get onto a schedule, how it gets funding. And that provides some confidence. They understand how things are working. We have a Citizens Planning Academy. Many of the folks that attend there are the folks who come to the board meetings and say, I'm upset about this, or this. And quite frankly, I think Henrico probably leads the way in citizen engagement when it comes to land development. So, I hear that, but, Henrico, nothing directly to you, Ms. O'Bannon, but Henrico does a great job with citizen engagement and communication, particularly over the years with land use matters. So whom we communicate with is very important. The last example I'll give is Community Services Board and Department of Social Services. Our Community Services Board knows what they're doing. They meet on a regular basis. They have an absolute, institutional knowledge of what's going on. The issue that we had is we had a lot of folks that were not receiving services because they didn't know where to go and didn't know exactly what the Community Services Board did. We didn't go out and do a PR, public relations advertisement campaign, but we did do a public relations campaign that focused around this is where we can direct folks. This is what we do, same day access, medication management, all of those types of things. So we have the resource. Now we're finding folks who are using those resources on a more regular basis. But I do think it's incumbent upon us, we've tossed around the word elected official, I think it's incumbent upon us to communicate clearly with our colleagues who can go out and disseminate that information, but with the public who have asked us to do certain things and mandated that we do certain things when they go to the ballot box talking about election cycles, that you must do this, you must do that, that we are delivering those. If we get it wrong, we need to hear from them. But we're actually we're talking about communicating with the people whose money we're spending and whose projects we're completing. I don't see how in any way that's not a priority. Mr. Peters. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a short follow-up. We're having a very good example of internal communication right now, and I can tell you that from Mr. Davey is going to have writer's cramp from all that. But I think to go back to one of the first things Ms. O'Bannon said was when you go out, general public or the people say, well, I don't care about all these details. Just has this been done or that been done? I think it does. It may give something to the public outreach committee to think about. Is what we might want to be doing is putting the bullet points that simply say that address, putting ourselves in the seats of the other stakeholders in the community and saying simply, what's in it for me? And answer that question.
Thank you. And that's the last comment I want to take on that. And if you have other comments, that's fine. We can talk offline, but I do want to welcome our guest from, I think it's Charles City, right?
Yeah, I'll just say, this woman doesn't actually sleep. So, Rhonda Russell is Deputy County Administrator for Charles City County and just does a phenomenal job. And so I am excited that she's here today, and she's got a presentation to tell about, I think, a really neat thing happening in Charles City County.
Welcome.
Thank you for the invitation and the opportunity to speak to the board. I am here today supporting Mr. Bill Cota, who has some comments at the end of, I think it's about a 10-slide presentation, but we're so intimately familiar with our projects, we're going to fly right through them. And so there are 4 projects that advance 3 strategic priorities for Charles City County. And those strategic priorities are food insecurity, creating opportunities to capture revenue generated by visitors to the Capitol Trail, as well as our efforts to expand broadband and create opportunities for every constituent in our community that wants fiber-based internet access to have that. So it's gone a little bit faster than I needed to go. So if you go back to the beginning for me. So the COVID-19 pandemic really brought to light something that we already knew in our community, and that's our food insecurity. We have no retail opportunities in Charles City County for our constituents to purchase fresh food. And so we had a temporary food pantry that was established by community members, and with the benevolence of Charles City County Public Schools, was able to use one of their buildings to provide weekly distribution of food resources. We were able to secure a grant from the Virginia Department of Housing and Community Development, a local innovation grant of $500,000, and through fundraising and local dollars, an additional $600,000 to build a permanent food pantry in the Ruthville area of our community. And actually just yesterday we had the pre-bid meeting and we were excited that we had 6 parties respond to that non-mandatory pre-bid meeting. So we're gonna have to find a way, Sid, to our rhythm is on. Maybe I'll come stand beside Sid.
You can tell me if you hear me next, I can kind of.
Why don't you sit over there and she can just look at you?
Yeah.
Okay. So this is the photo of our it was, I guess, what they call our VOTEC building at Charles City County Public Schools. And so during the pandemic, the height of the pandemic, our partners with Feed More, about 60 volunteers in the community were able to do the weekly food distribution. I would be remiss if I did not share with you all that the Greater Richmond Community Foundation was incredibly supportive with this effort. I think there's a total of $22,000 in support for equipment, as well as the lease fees when that operation had to move from the school to a private facility. There we go. Okay, next please. Yes. Again, this just kind of reiterates what our funding is for our permanent food pantry, $500,000 from the state. have a friend of the community, a private benefactor who has agreed to a $300,000 cash donation plus in-kind donations in terms of support services, engineering, earthworks, things of that nature, and $200,000 from Charles City County. We are hopeful that that operation will be open July 1 of 2022. Next. Thank you. John Randolph Foundation also awarded Charles City County a $40,000 grant to support the food pantry, and that is to fund for 1 year, in part, a food pantry coordinator position, and they will help us with our upstart for our relationship with Feed More supplies and things of that nature. So we're real excited about that. And what's really, I've never seen this happen before. When you apply for a grant and you go for the announcement, they hand you the funds like right before you leave. So we will be tapping their shoulders every opportunity there is. Next, please.
I was gonna mention.
Yes, absolutely. So I'll move the slides around so that we're talking about the projects in relationship to our strategic priorities, food insecurity, Dollar General Marketplace. And so this is a new model for Dollar General, will be coming to Charles City County. They had to go through a rezoning process. The property is, the proposed development is off Roxbury Road and Wayside. If you would advance, I think there are 2 slides to show the difference, so it's like a, Walmart neighborhood mart, then so fresh foods, fresh meats, plus some of the soft line products that Dollar General typically has, but more a grocery venue than soft line venue.
Redesigned all our system.
So awesome.
That's so awesome.
It is, thank you. Next, Rivers Rest Marina is, and it's an existing property that was acquired, I think, with what we would call a distress sale by Yogi Singh, is between Charles City and the Richmond metropolitan area as well. That we are just always seeking opportunities to capture a portion of those spending dollars for the visitors in our community. And if you've not been to Rivers Rest in some time, it's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. About 102 RV slots, some tiny home slots. They renovated the existing hotel and completely renovated the marina. There are a couple of more pictures that show. Next. Yes. So Mr. Singh, I think it's beautiful, but he's not happy with, I think it's the rock and the stone for actually the RV slots. And so they have put off their opening until next spring and already have a commitment of 80% of those reservation opportunities. So wonderful. The aerial of our Rivers Rest development, and then just the nightlife. You wouldn't think that they're, yes, Mr. Gray?
I'm sorry to interrupt, but it's not my place really, but I love that place. It's super cool. We've been down there, taken our boat down there several times. The services are great. The people are fantastic. The food at the Blue Heron restaurant is outstanding. I mean, you would not believe it. Yeah, it's a great facility, so very impressive.
You go in by boat?
Yep.
Call me next time I'll go in. I'll let you buy.
Okay, so I want to spend a whole lot of time here. These figures are from the Capital Trail Foundation. And so revenue generated annually for the visitors to the trail exceed $8 million. And it is our intent to capture as much of that as we can. And the only way we're going to do that is creating opportunities for visitors to purchase, to stay in our community. And so we have 2 opportunities. We're excited about both. One is larger, significantly larger than the other, that we wanted to share with you as well. So Breeze Inn, I'm sure you're familiar with the Bogies, Mr. Bogies and Mr. Bogies, senior and junior, at Route 5 in Sandy Point, purchased an existing convenience store and have completely renovated that store consistent with their brand. They're proposing to open the store at the end of the year. And our conversations with them, I was so excited that their business model is full, most of their employees are full-time employees. And so at that location, they're proposing 7 full-time employees, 4 part-time employees. And we're hopeful that as we build that relationship, that we will entice them to develop a laundromat in close proximity to this site, because we've got a strategic plan that was done some time ago where our community members expressed that as a desire in Charles City County. So we're excited about the Breeze Inn. That's the smaller of the 2 opportunities. The next opportunity is the proposed Milk and Honey Brewery. And so, Mr. Coder, I might need you to help me with this, because I don't know the time frame for when our neighborhood facilities building in Charles City County was vacated. And so that is in our government center complex. And so Mr. Ernst Valerie approached Charles City County about a public-private opportunity or partnership, the long-term lease agreement to redevelop that property. And the proposed uses for Ernst Valerie, he's Baltimore, but has a couple of developments in the Richmond metropolitan area as well, and has, a national and international development presence. Our neighborhood facilities building, this is the proposed renovation of that facility. It will cater to our cyclists and those parties who visit the Capitol Trail. Anyone familiar with Cole's Bar and Grill?
Cole's Courthouse Grill.
Cole's Courthouse Grill. It's almost directly across from Cole's Courthouse Grill. So at the intersection of Courthouse Road and Route 5. Oh, man. Richard.
That's the interior of the proposed building.
I know, but it's my list. I've got the video up there. So it will include community room, conference room, beer hall, cafes, outdoor patios, and tap room in the first bottom floor. The cyclists will actually be able to go through the facility and partake of all of those opportunities.
Grab and go.
Yeah. Yes. Okay, thank you so much. The last opportunity I wanted to talk to you all about is in 2020, Charles City County received the highest score for the body grant awards. With those dollars and our partner Comcast, we were able to cover about 2/3 of the community. We have submitted 2 additional opportunities. Body 2021, it's about a $12 million opportunity, and Reconnect dollars, I think that's like $3.5 million, which will cover the other third of our community, which is District 3, plus with the first body dollars, the grant funded laterals from the public right-of-way only 300 feet off of the public right-of-way. So a number of households aren't serviced, but we're not serviced by that grant opportunity. We've circled back. We know exactly how many households were not serviced by that opportunity. So we will, if awarded, connect those households plus service all of District 3. And so we should have an answer for the body, both Reconnect and body grant dollars by the end of the year. So we're really excited about that. I think I'm not overstating, we've taken a beating on that from our constituents, because, the question that is often asked is how could you go forward without servicing all of us? So
we're still taking a beating. Even with the successes we've had, we're still taking a beating.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
So I think we're super, super excited. If we compare our our past history with our recent history in terms of grant awards to support strategic initiatives. So we've got the local innovation grant at $500,000, the $40,000 from the John Randolph Foundation, the Greater Richmond Community Foundation for our food pantry of $10,000 initially, then another $12,000 subsequent to that. By 2021, we'll find out by the end of the year, about $12 million, and then the Kitchen Reconnect dollars at 3.5. So there's this exciting times in Charles City County, and we are appreciative of your support.
Thank you, Ms. Russell.
Mr. Cook.
I'm gonna make it very short and sweet because she went way too long, by the way. Thank you for the presentation. Good job. Dr. Russell and Michelle Johnson, our county administrators, I said the other night in a meeting, are the queen of gathering grant money, and they're continuing on it. However, it's terrible when you show up at a meeting with colleagues from these localities with exciting news that we're getting a Dollar General and a Breeze Inn. And that's what we're doing here today.
You're getting an awesome Dollar General.
Well, we demanded an awesome one, but anyway.
See, that's my case.
48% of our children qualify for free or reduced lunches in Charles City. We don't even have a traffic light in Charles City. We're just now getting the internet in Charles City. And what I'm leading up to on all of this, and I'm gonna make it really, really quick. When the exciting news is that a Breeze Inn is coming, we don't even have a 7-Eleven, Ms. O'Bannon. Most people don't even realize that Charles City County actually butts up to Henrico County, and we share a county line. And if it wasn't for New Kent and Henrico and other localities, we wouldn't have been able to survive. Henrico even gave us a fire engine not too terribly long ago, thinking he's not even here to hear it. The reason that the community building is getting renovated the way it is because it would have cost us too much to tear it down and renovate it ourselves because it had asbestos in it. So we entered into a $1 lease in order to bring this to the community. So it's a win-win-win. I look forward to working closely, especially with CVTA and PlanRVA on what we can do and help in Charles City going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. And these local innovation plans that are being shared with us are just designed to give us all some perspective about what's happening in our member jurisdictions. And we appreciate the work and the good efforts being done on behalf of citizens in Charles City. And thank you. Thank you both for sharing today. Unless there are further comments, questions, or concerns, do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn. Second.